Can you tell me if we're running live, Dr. Mike?
Just checking. Yep, we're live.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this virtual meeting of Strategy and Resources Committee. I'm the Chair, Councillor Merry, and welcome also to those members of the public who are listening in online to this meeting. And just to remind you that we are live and being recorded, and that anything you write in the chat box is also visible to the public. I believe we're quorate, but I just need to take a roll call to check. We have apologies and substitutions for Councillor Duffel and Councillor Garfield, who are substituted by Councillor Canal and Councillor Emmett. So if I just take a quick roll call, if you could, members, confirm that you can hear and see proceedings when I call your name, that would be helpful to the committee. Thank you. Is Councillor Ahmed here? Councillor Berlin?
Present, Chair, and I can hear loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Councillor Namreen Chowdhury yet? No, I don't think so. Councillor Canal?
Present, Chair, I can hear and see you clearly.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Emmett?
Good evening, Chair. I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Councillor Sham Islam?
Good evening, Chair. I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mohammed Javed?
I'm all here, Chair. And can I take a minute that Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed is away, isn't he? On
oh, yes.
Leave.
Sorry.
His apologies.
Apology on his part, yes. Councillor Taifur Rashid?
I'm here, Chair. I can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Can see you as well.
Councillor Martin Sachs?
Yes, Chair, I'm present, and so far I've heard everybody clearly.
Okay, we are receiving you as well. Thanks very much. Councillor Serena Sangar?
Yeah, I'm here too.
Thank you very much. Okay, can we also note the attendance of Councillor Cabinet Member Councillor Helen Coombe, who will be participating in items later on the agenda. I will confirm the names and positions of the officers in attendance when we come to those particular items on the agenda. Just to remind you, in terms of meeting procedure and arrangements, please keep your microphones muted when you've not been and when you're not called to speak, because the background interference noise does become unbearable. If you wish to speak, as usual, please raise the digital yellow hand. No shouting out and jumping in, please. I really don't like that sort of thing. It won't work with me. Stick your hand up and I will call you to speak. As I said earlier, you're free to use the chat function, but I would prefer it, and so would the committee officers, if you use it for technical issues such as I can't hear, I can't see, my connection's gone down, rather than passing comments and observations on the meeting. But I can't stop you from doing that, but I'll just remind you that whatever you put into the chat function is visible to the public. So try to keep it under control, please, members. Just in case you do have problems, as Councillor Chowdhury seems to have, and you can't get back into you lose contact with the meeting due to a Wi-Fi problem, you can alternatively use the dial-in facility. And if you're having trouble with that, Councillor Dr. Michael will assist you to access the meeting using that facility. Okay, at this stage, I just have to remind you about declarations of interest. All members should declare any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest that they have or their spouse and partner may have in any matter that is being considered at committee this meeting. If you do have a declaration to make, please make it before the item that it refers to. If we move on to item 3, I'm of the belief that there are no public participation items tonight. Nobody has applied. Is that
correct.
still correct?
Yeah, that's still correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, that means we can move on to item 4, which is the main meat of the meeting. Item 4, the minutes of the previous meeting. Has anybody got any amendments, comments, or queries on the minutes of the previous meeting? Anybody got anything to raise on actions from those minutes? No? Okay, fine. That does mean that we can move on to the main item of the evening, which is the item 5, the annual corporate accessibility update. Those of you who've been on the committee for a while will remember that back in 2019 we received a report from Scrutiny on the annual corporate accessibility report, which was a very good and detailed piece of work, and we did ask them to come back and give us an update, which they are doing tonight. And of course that was before the weird bug called COVID entered into our lives, so that has obviously produced an even more difficult aspect into the issue of access to council services over the last year of this strange pandemic. So they'll be addressing that issue as part of it. So I'm hoping that members have read through what is a very comprehensive and detailed presentation, which I'm going to call on Fanaza Ahmed first to take you through the bulk of the presentation, at which stage I'll ask you to raise questions and issues with her, and then we'll ask Emran Seigel to take us through the digital inclusion element of the presentation. Okay, so further ado, Fanaza, are you ready to roll with your presentation on this and prepared to take questions from councillors afterwards?
Thank you, Councillor Anne, but I think Emran was going to introduce the report.
Sorry, Emran, do you want to do a little intro? Sorry.
Yes, and if I can just introduce Julian Ellaby, who's on the call here, as the Corporate Director of Strategy.
So good evening, everyone. I don't know if you can see me, but I've just started at the council. This is my first official day, and as the new Director of Strategy. If it's all right, Chair, I just partly wanted to introduce myself, but partly just to add a couple of comments, and then I wanted to hand over to Emran to lead on this, and then with Fazana.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Julian.
Very kind.
Well, welcome on board. We've tried to be
you.
a fairly easygoing and
yes,
cheerful bunch
welcome,
here.
and I hope your tenure is a long one.
Or as long as you want it to be. Okay, thank you, Julian. Rock and roll.
Quick comments. Firstly, just to say, having gone through the report, I just wanted to say, from my own perspective, I think it was a really excellent piece of work, and lots of food for thought. I just wanted to add a couple of comments, just almost a kind of request for you to think about while you're going through this. I think you mentioned, Chair, about the context, and obviously COVID being that context. There's a kind of, the report picks up on a lot of the work that's done, but we need to think about the work that will happen as we come out of COVID, and kind of some of the implications as I think particularly around employment and kind of what's going to happen to the local economy. And something that I was talking to Fazana about was also about the relationship to some of the bigger opportunities or issues coming up. So, for example, there will be an employment program called Restart, which is going to happen across Redbridge and a number of other London boroughs that we're part of a grouping of. That will be worth £230 million over the next 3 years. That will target across those, it's 13 boroughs, it will target 116,000 residents. So it's an opportunity where Redbridge will participate, and it's the kind of issue I want to think about in terms of how we come out of recovery, what's the implications for the audiences we're talking about this evening, and how do we ensure that they are benefiting from some of these kind of not just simply Redbridge opportunities, but kind of wider opportunities. So I just kind of wanted to, part of my job is thinking about some of those wider opportunities. But if it's all right, I'd like to hand over now, Chair, to Emran, and he can get into some of the detail.
It will be very short, thanks, Julian, because it is Fazana who has pulled this piece of work together, and it's fairly comprehensive. Fazana's going to walk through and take us through some of the highlights, the impacts of COVID, and a summary of what we've achieved over the course of the last 12 months. We'll then pause for some questions, and then Mandy Vanderpoy, who's our digital inclusion lead here at the council, will take us through the work that we're doing, the good work that we're doing in that space, to give you a sense of what's happening now and what's to come, which leads into and touches on the point that Julian talked about there around skills and opportunity going forward. So I'll hand over to Fazana.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Emran. Good evening, all. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see the presentation. What I won't do is go through all of it, but just pull out a few highlights for you to consider across some of the key themes. So can you see that? Yeah, thank you. So when we were looking at this last year, almost a year before now, pre-COVID, we looked at some kind of key themes. So I just want to touch on those before we go into COVID so you can compare. So the first time we looked at it, the key themes that came through the look at data that we did with the Business Intelligence Hub, and looking at complaints and the kind of information people request, and also talking directly with residents with disabilities during a day at the festival in the park for people with disabilities. There's quite a lot of information we gathered, and there were some key themes that came through. So last time round, it was around welfare and benefit cuts. So the more so people with disabilities lost more in welfare, but also in services than anyone else because of the impacts of kind of cuts to welfare. But the more severe someone's disability was, the more that they lost. So that was one thing. The other key areas to consider were access to transport. So nationally, but also in the borough, the levels of accessibility of transport, whether that's trains, whether that's bus routes, whether that's locations where you don't have much access into. We looked at housing, so the demand for housing and how we're meeting that, and whether we're meeting that. So in terms of wheelchair access and other types of access adaptation, so that was a key theme. And then the fourth one was around employment, which is, as Julian touched on, an interesting one, because we have such good schools, such good SEND provision. We do independent travel training. We really prepare our young people with disabilities as well as we can. But the opportunities for employment don't necessarily then appear always for them. So that these were pathways we were looking at as to how we can go from that excellent preparation into actual work for people in different ways. So those were some of the key themes last time. And then, as you say, we had COVID, the impact of COVID. So broadly, there was quite a few different things that we were starting to identify locally and more broadly about the impact of COVID. The themes that stood out the most, the first one was information. So if you think about how quickly information was changing and how regularly government was putting information out, and we as a council were then translating that, trying to find different ways to get that to people, our communities, those that are seldom heard and others. If you then look at that through the lens of accessibility and think about how quickly that information was changing for people who were shielding and perhaps not always able to access that information, that became a real problem nationally. Information, advice and guidance changing at pace, and then getting that out to people that need it most. So that was one thing. The second one was around, it says here food poverty, but access to food. So early on, the issues that we had around online shopping, delivery slots, many people that had a disability or were vulnerable, but weren't necessarily getting the help that they need. So early on, that became quite a big problem. School closures. So closures to schools meant that lots of other wraparound support was lost, and it says they're like the counselling, therapies, social care, and other elements. So picking up where there's a problem, teachers and others picking up where there's a problem became much more difficult. So the knock-on effects for young people with disabilities then potentially become extensive. And finally, around mental health. So when you look at, for instance, the regular releases of data from the ONS and various other groups, what you keep finding again and again and again is nationally, well-being and mental health has suffered, but actually for people with disabilities, that's been significantly exacerbated because of that feeling of vulnerability, that loss of information, that loss of networks, that not being able to connect socially, and various other reasons. You just find on every indicator again and again, we were seeing that it's been exacerbated and it's much worse. So that was broadly what we were looking at before, and what became kind of really in our vision very strongly during this time. The next thing I wanted to share with you was the survey we did last summer. So I won't go through all of this. I just wanted to share with you some of the findings. So what we did was a survey we did last summer with more broadly residents, asking them about things like community, well-being, and various other effects that they had because of COVID-19. The actual sample of people with disabilities was not very, very big. So this is kind of almost like an insight that we can then look at a little bit further in other ways. So it was a small cohort of people that declared disability, but what we broadly found on almost every single indicator was that although the trend was the same, so they felt that their well-being was worse, they felt more lonely, they felt like less connected, it was, as I said, exacerbated. So they felt the effect much, much more. And if you think of the national conversation we were having of how COVID impacts on people with who are vulnerable, and you can see that start to bear out here. I mean, we had really, really intense discussions about people with from different ethnic minorities, the impact on women, but there's some communities that perhaps felt as if that their stories were lost a little bit. And I think of that, you know, with LGBT, but also again with disability, how that story might be lost a little bit in terms of the impact on them, you know, really unequal impact on them. So I'm just going to show you some of the things that people are saying. So in terms of the concerns they have, there's some things there, loneliness is there, kind of the financial impact, just worry and anxiety about not knowing, you know, what's going to happen next, what the impact's going to be, how long they have to shield. So kind of a real range of worries and anxieties that people are just having to often deal with alone. And then on the other side, just to kind of contrast with some of the things that people thought were good or helpful during kind of more positive elements of life during COVID. So the council's wellbeing service was significantly, you know, people mentioned that as a bit of a lifeline. Offers of help, and although they're saying they felt disconnected, but actually a greater sense of community where there was that sense of community. And it's interesting to say people, so that person at the top saying, I felt very well looked after by Redbridge because I was in the shielded group and I was offered help. So many of you will have seen this across the communities that you serve, that these themes kind of coming through. So that was the COVID survey from last year, and those themes. The last thing I wanted to share with you, so it's a little bit further down, is what have we done? So if you remember last year, we kind of discussed, we came to you with a plan of action. We had kind of 6 or 7 big themes, and we said we were going to try and create movement on these by doing certain things. So there's a few things that we did across that. So in terms of, we were talking about, we wanted a more joined up approach where services were talking to each other, we knew what each other was doing, and we could actually track data. So what we have now in place is the Corporate Accessibility Working Group, and what that means is when we finish here today, when you've told us what you want and when we've agreed a way forward, the next step is we go back to that working group and we start looking at how we start to deliver. So we now have a group across the council that we can regularly keep coming back and making sure we're doing the work. In terms of raising awareness and disability training, so we started the guidance, we need to complete that, and once that's published we need to look at how we get that into the kind of awareness of all of our staff. But customers, Sue Austin and customers done a fantastic or started a fantastic piece of work with One Place East, the disability advocacy group, on creating training videos with people with disabilities kind of trying to help us understand as staff members how they would like to be treated, or how we can best support them. So that's although they've agreed to do that with us, you can imagine with shielding, there's some challenges of actually starting that piece of work and really getting anywhere. But I'm really excited about that piece of work, because I think it's one that we can easily get to every person in the council and say, right, here's some examples from people with disabilities talking directly. So that will be fantastic. Maximizing benefits from social value, that's a really, really positive one again. And what we've done is, and what we do now is, through all of our big contracts, we've got on the one hand, accessibility and equalities as a theme. So we encourage contract managers to have that as a theme in the things that they ask for under social value, but it's also in the list of things that we measure. So things like how many people with a disability go into work, training, coaching, various other things. So there's some very specific things that we can do in that now that we've developed, but also we're actually having those conversations with the suppliers, and they are actually agreeing to do some things with us, which is a really, really positive step forward. There's a whole piece of work around digital exclusion that Emma and Mandy will go through with you. There's a review of the Find and My Life websites. Our website has over time improved in accessibility, and we're going to continue on that piece of work to make sure we do. And the capital access program that exists, what the usual step with that is to work with services to understand where can we use that pot of money to get the best impact. So in the past, it's been used for the Changing Places toilet in the exchange, which was brilliant. So that's broadly what we've been doing the last year. That doesn't kind of include, that's against what we came to you with before COVID. So that doesn't include the additional work we did during COVID, like the test and trace work with the vision impaired group, like the wellbeing service and other things. So those are in addition. That's broadly where we are. The only other thing that I would check in with you is kind of looking at where the gaps are. So we've done those things. We think we need to carry on working on those areas going forward. So this is the work plan going forward, is to continue to look at those areas and develop work around those areas. But are they the right thing? So keeping in mind your experience of residents and what they come to you with, but also keeping in mind what we've just seen with COVID and the impact that's had. Are these things that we've listed here? So the joined up approach and advocacy, staff awareness, the digital exclusion piece, and kind of the web presence and social value, are these the right things? And should we be doing something else? So that would be my question that I leave you with before I hand over to Emran. I guess the other thing that I'd encourage you to think about is, in your role as councillors and very much as advocates for people with disabilities, are we giving you the right information for your decision making? So that's the other thing. Are these the right things, and do you get the adequate information when you make your decision? Are you able to make those decisions with the right information and insight to be able to say, yeah, we're making decisions that don't harm people with disabilities but benefit them? So I'll leave at that. And Imran, I don't know if you want to take any questions. I can't see hands up with the screen, or if you want to go into digital exclusion bit.
Thank you, Farzana. Yeah, we'll see if Councillor's got any questions to Farzana at the moment before we take Emran.
You're muted, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Javed, I see you have your hand up.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Thank
good
you.
evening all again. Chair, could I first of all echo your earlier comments that this is a comprehensive report and presentation. We'll thank the officers and Farzana for doing so. One of the things I found, though, was the data missing, the numbers, because in this local authorities always this authority have a challenge for providing various services, meeting needs, various needs, but this time was extra additional because of the COVID. And you know, I think we've done reasonably well, but how many people? I've seen data elsewhere, but would have been good to include it today. And on the loneliness, I can agree that a number of people living on their own. I made contact with quite a few, and they said, well, thank the council for offering that welfare support, but they needed something more than, just that. They needed somebody to talk to, perhaps on a weekly basis and so on. Well, local authorities don't probably have resources to do that, but, I don't know how many those people were that perhaps we could look in future. The other thing I would say at this stage, and I'll come to action plan later, is that the joined up approach. On COVID, to be honest with you, it became information fatigue. I was getting 3-4 emails, and Fazana, you and 3 others were working on this, 3 people, and I suggested very earlier on that it's becoming like Brexit. Every time to tell you on, it's about COVID. Then I got 3-4 emails, frankly speaking, I didn't get to read them myself. And that instead of spending more information telling us what's going on, try and shift that on to the public as to how best we could do that instead. I'll come to actions later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Fazana, did you feel able to respond to some specifics there? I think Councillor Javed was wandering off into a bit of a broader issue towards the end there that you might not feel happy about tackling yourself, but can you deal with that?
Yeah, so hopefully, so with the data, I think that's a good shout. What we wanted to do going forward was start collecting key performance indicators. So from the different services, the information that they hold in disability, next time round, we'd like to bring back a suite of data that you can then review regularly and see what's changing and what the numbers are. So hopefully that's something we can bring back. On the loneliness, we did a lot of work around befriending. So although we don't have all that insight, we had Age Concern and others that we had set up all of that work around befriending. Of course, it doesn't address everyone's situation, but it was, I suppose, a start. It was one of the ways we tried to address that. So that's only a very partial response to that. And in terms of the COVID comms, I'll take that on board. That is all we have seen for a year, isn't it? In every direction, in the WhatsApp groups and the emails and the news everywhere. So yeah, absolutely take that on board and take that back to our COVID comms people. I guess it's what do we see and what reaches people with disabilities that they need to know. So the information they need to know about the services they receive that might change, what were they getting and was it right and was it in time? So I guess that's slightly different from the deluge we were getting. That's a slight nuance on that. Does that help?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll come back to some action plans. Helen is laughing because I have a lot more to say, but I won't say it at this stage.
Thank you, Fazana. Yeah, I think we've all been a bit deluged with COVID-related information, but I mean it's a balancing act, isn't it? I mean, the people are often keen to complain that they get no information, and then when you give them lots of information, they claim it being overloaded. So it's a delicate balance, and not easily achieved all the time. Okay, Councillor Sachs, you got a contribution to make here?
I have indeed, yes. Thank you, Chair. Actually, first of all, I'd like to welcome Julian Ellaby to Redbridge as our new corporate director. I think Julian's actually been following me around because 20 years ago I was working with him when he was the regional director for London Labour Party. And more recently, I think about 10 years ago, we were fellow officers at the London Borough of Lambeth, and I recall Julian being very helpful to me on some comms issues. So welcome to Redbridge, and I look forward, as does our chair, to working with you for a very long time to come. Some questions to Fazana. This issue of COVID overload, and I certainly understand where that's coming from, but I want to mention an issue which I don't think is covered in the report unless I missed it, which is long COVID, which seems to be causing, I think it's affecting something like 20% of COVID sufferers. And it does seem to me that that must include a lot of those with disabilities. And it does seem to me that that's an issue we do need to address. So I'm hoping you'll be able to give us a little bit of chapter and verse on that. On the social value. I think this is actually an area where we're, as councillors, we're actually under-informed because it's. I think I've said this when social value has come up at other committees. It's important that we as members are actually on the case and involved in those discussions. I understand that we use the national framework of, they're called TOMS, themes, objectives and measures. I believe in order to achieve what we need, we actually need to make some of those mandatory, i.e. the tenders, when they're putting their bids in, must make a submission on that. I think it's important that council members are involved in that. And I just want to quote an example. I understand that at the moment we're fast tracking a reprocurement of the contract that's currently delivered by Kenson on our highways. It does seem to me that's a very important contract affecting the way in which people get about, and very much affects accessibility. So it does seem to me that that's an area where we need to ensure that is part of the social value bid. I'm slightly worried about the contract being put out on a fast track, because I think it's important that proper time, including member involvement, goes into developing that. And my final point is on disabled access. We've recently had there was a discussion, a fairly controversial planning application relating to a car park at a private college in Eastern Avenue. And the planning permission was granted, which means that the car park is going to be built over. There's been a very strong lobby to the council from, as I understand it, representatives of students who are there, who are saying, well, this is preventing disabled students having access to the college. Personally, I would take issue with that point of view, because in this day and age of climate emergency, we shouldn't be encouraging people to make those sort of journeys by car. But it does throw up the issue of how we ensure that these facilities do have proper provision for access for disabled people. And I think that runs right across the education area. I think my question is, do we accept the Disability Discrimination Act standards as the basis, or are we looking for something better? I think we should be, but we need to be having those discussions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sachs. Fazana, do you feel able to cover what sounded like some quite detailed stuff there? I think Emran.
My hand up.
Yeah, I see you, Councillor Coombe. Don't worry, I will get to you. I see Emran had his hand up. I think he might want to make a contribution in here. Do you want to come in first there, Emran?
Yeah, it was just in response to the comments that Councillor Jarvid had made around communications, and yes, you know, everyone felt the overload from a comms perspective. I think it's worth noting the fact that as much as the council were pushing via its traditional channels, you know, the website and various other mediums, the kind of broader messages around COVID and the pace at which it was changing. It was something that was, you know, a daily event in terms of new news coming out. But it's worth just noting the various community networks that were set up and still exist and have continued to exist across the authority, where that local comms, getting messages through to various community groups that in maybe times gone by pre-COVID would have been lost on the council in that broader comms piece. It's been, one of the successes of how the communications has really changed with the community over the course of the last 12 months, and those relationships now embedded across a number of network groups where we can through be it social care or our voluntary sector, get those messages out in an accessible format to those groups. So just worth noting, the broader communications was one that was well received across London and across the UK. I think the LGA kind of stood Redbridge up as being a benchmark when it came to communications, and that was something that was well received, obviously, by the council. But just a point to note with regards to Councillor Sachs' comments on planning and its conversations. We've been having those conversations in the background, talking about particularly the Growth Commission and the report that's come through and been publicised, and there is a feeling within that report that does it focus, and do we have enough focus on accessibility in general, and that's something that internally within the offices we will be having that conversation as to how we can really join the two conversations up.
Right, thanks, Emma. Councillor Coombe, do you want to come in at this stage?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to say, it's a good point about the long COVID, but I'm not really sure that there's enough data out there. But it is definitely something that, we need to look towards, because there will be people who will have more difficulties than they previously had and will find themselves in more difficulties and looking for more support. So I think that's something definitely to be aware of, but I'm not sure that Susanna will correct me if I'm wrong, that we've actually got any data on that at the moment, because these things are still being questioned, even by and not completely known by the medical professions as yet. The thing I would say about social value is that the councillors, we had a session on social value, and there was a list I can't remember which committee, I'm sorry, of contracts coming up in the forthcoming year for councillors to be able to make some comments on at the beginning of the procurement, rather than actually monitoring how contracts are actually delivered. And just to add to Emran's point about the last point from Councillor Sachs about that particular planning application, that's not really a subject for this committee to go into the details of all of that. But actually, most planning applications, when parking is included in it in bigger schemes, it is for very few parking spaces, and the majority of those to be for disabled parking. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Councillor Coombe. Susanna, do you feel there's any specifics you want to refer to here in response to Councillor Sachs?
Just two small things. So on the long COVID, Councillor Coombs is right in saying we don't have that data. What I would say is, if you look back to the previous data, and again this time, we know that on every single different type of disability, the population is growing. So the demand on us, on our service, is due to growth. So that's mental health, learning disabilities, physical and severe physical disabilities. Across all of that, there's growth in the population. So then to have the impact of long COVID, what that's telling us is that potentially that growth is even more than what we'd expected. So just a point on that, but not more than that. We don't have that data to hand at this point that I know of. On the social value, I think there was a session on 16th of February for councillors, a training session. Edith has said that we can share the slides on that, so that will give you the overview of the work that's been going on if people find that helpful. And on I think Councillor Sachs mentioned the TOMS framework on measuring social value. So I've just seen the new one. Procurement shared it with us in preparation to make sure we maximise the social value in the new Kensons, not the new Kensons, but the new highways contract. and it was so much better. The new one's so much better, so it goes into a lot more detail on the kinds of things that we are looking for, like benefits for people with disabilities. So that's quite positive around that. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you, Farzana. Councillor Sachs, you had a reasonable response to the issues you raised there?
Yes, thanks. Although if there is some information on that on the Kenson contract specifically, I would like to see that, please.
Okay, we'll see what we can facilitate on that. Councillor Emmett, you got your hand up. Do you want to?
Thank you, Chair.
Come in,
thank you for allowing me to talk. I'm aware that I'm a very late addition to this committee. Whilst I did glance through the presentation I haven't tonight, something I have missed, but what struck me was, I don't have any questions, but a comment through my involvement with Citizens Advice. There was a result of a survey last year looking at a particular group being young people, 18 to 24, and this was at a national level. It showed that this is the group that was going to be most seriously impacted by COVID, would probably benefit most from advice and assistance, but also they were the group that were the most difficult to reach. So reaching out, getting information to them was difficult. This was further compounded by when a large number of them were contacted, they weren't actually firmly convinced that Citizens Advice or other organisations like them were the people that they needed to help, to get the help and assistance from. So we got a three-pronged. They're the most the people most likely to be impacted, the people most difficult to reach, and the people most likely to believe that this expertise isn't what they require. And as I read those few pages in the report, I just think in the back of my brain that there were parallels emerging, and I wonder if there's been any indication from that at all. Bearing in mind we are talking about a lot about comms. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, Councillor Emmett. Farzana, you got some observations there?
Yeah,
I must admit, I do worry about the sort of younger age group coming out of particularly the economic effects of coming out of the COVID pandemic eventually. Thank you.
So one of the pieces of work that's happening locally with Citizens Advice Redbridge at the moment is they've set up a pilot. So maybe you're already aware they've set up a pilot with young advisors, young people. So they've got a cohort of young people that they pay the living wage, and they are testing their information, advice and guidance offer with the young people to make sure it's the information that they need right now, and that what is the best way for it to reach them. And the idea is if the pilot works well in Redbridge and they are able to get the right information to young people, they will then replicate that nationally. So that's Citizens Advice Redbridge are doing that at the moment. And again, we can get some more information to anyone that's interested. That they're sharing their progress on that with us as part of the UNICEF Child Friendly Programme. So that's a positive that perhaps we could capitalise in some way in this area.
Well, I mean, we have a young person doing that work in the background, and I was actually on her appointment panel. So I'm sure you've got all the I'm sure you've got all the information and contacts you need. But yeah, one again, it did strike me that there are some parallels there, and I'm glad you're working with Imogen.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Emmett. Councillor Islam, I see you had your hand up for a while. Do you want to come in with a question here to Farzana?
Thank you, Chair. Farzana, I say thank you for the presentation. I just my other fellow colleagues did whatever they was raising, I share most of it. I just want to particularly come to the point. Then I just want to find out then in terms of engaging the community. What are the platforms? How well we are using the voluntary organizations as and what platform we are using to engaging the community. Thank you.
So on that one, there's a couple of things I can share, but I think the work that's been done in Emran's space might be a really good response to that, because they've done a really good piece of work. So Emran, do you want to pick that up under your digital, or what's the best?
Yeah, I think Mandy's going to cover that in the digital space. But I think if you're talking in terms of generic platforms, obviously digital has suddenly popped up as playing a huge role in all of our lives, and that digital inclusion end is something the council, as part of our digital and customer experience strategy, is a major theme, and one that when we came to this committee towards the end of last year, and as we went through overview and cabinets, we spoke about digital inclusion and the need to really push that agenda, not just words on a page, and not just ticking boxes, but how do we bring the strategy to life and really drive that agenda across the community, where we talk about skills, we talk about digital poverty, we talk about, in the outset, actually understanding the problem. You know, to what extent is digital inclusion an issue?
It was cold downstairs. I turned the heating, and I should have actually turned the heat on. I've done. Actually, you can turn it off.
Jodri, is that you? I think you're unmuted.
Sorry.
Thank you. If you could mute. Thank you. Sorry, Emran, you want to continue?
So the work that Mandy's going to talk about will cover most of those points in terms of platforms, in terms of how we intend to kind of drive that agenda across Redbridge. And she'll also talk about the partnership, the Redbridge Digital Inclusion Partnership that has been formed to help tackle the various issues. So I don't know, Chair, if this is a good moment to.
Yeah, it might well be. It might well be. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating they want to quiz Farzana particularly. I just want to say I was interested to hear what she said on in terms of developing KPIs, given that was what I was doing in my last 3 years employed by Hackney. I was basically monitoring and compiling the KPIs for housing development at that stage. So I know where we are on that issue, and we need to develop the monitoring side in terms of KPIs. Okay, Emran, who's going to do the digital inclusion then? Sorry, I've lost track of names.
So right on cue, that's Mandy Vanderpoy, who's our digital inclusion lead.
Okay, Mandy, sorry. Okay, Mandy, when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. So yes, I'm Mandy Vanderpoy, Programme Manager for Digital Inclusion. We met back in December to talk through the work that we're doing and to discuss our approach to eliminating digital exclusion and to get your input into the kind of things that we should be looking at. And I guess this is also a progress and an update on what's happened since then. So like Emran said, we have brought partners together from across partner organisations in the borough, and we will be launching our Connecting Redbridge partnership in the next few weeks. And those partners include Vision, RCVS, Redbridge Institute, Redbridge New City College, Work Redbridge, DWP Job Centre, Chamber of Commerce, and it's chaired by Councillor Helen Coombe. And we're looking to deliver a whole raft of initiatives in order to eliminate digital exclusion within the borough. So we're looking at the infrastructure that includes the connectivity, data issues and the devices that our residents and businesses will need. So we're working with providers. We've been working with Local London and the GLA as well as businesses in order to identify where the needs are. The GLA have an ambition to make sure that every part of London has fast fibre broadband by 2025. Within Redbridge, 85% of the borough is covered by fast fibre. So we need to get 15% of the borough that isn't covered, although all parts of the borough do actually have some form of broadband offer. So we're not down the list in terms of connectivity compared to some other boroughs. We're also looking for skills. So obviously skills is a big part in order to make sure that people do have not only the skills to use online, but are also really confident. And particularly, as you will have known, during the COVID period, there's been a rise in fraud and people scamming people. And it came out in our engagement that we did with One Place East and Age UK pre-COVID, that was a real concern from them, and that was the major reason as to why they didn't adopt digital platforms and wanted to go online. So we're really looking to coordinate a campaign with partners to get residents interested in learning digital skills, and we want to provide different packages, bespoke packages. So a formal package for those who need some formal basic digital skills training, but also the informal packages. So something bespoke that will meet an individual's needs. So it could be someone turns up with a device and they just want help to do something rather than go through a formal training course. And we'll also be ensuring that we'll be providing an offer for the skills within our workforces across our organisations. Microsoft are really eager to work with us to develop that content, and borough-wide are eager to work with us on a Digital Skills Week, which hopefully we can consider obviously once lockdown is lifted and everyone is more comfortable in that space. So they obviously have a huge amount of content and knowledge about how to make better use of accessibility functions, and we use their products every day. And we know that even within our own workforce, we don't understand the capability that we have with the Microsoft suite and how we can better use it in order to make things more accessible for our users. So we need to make sure that staff think about accessibility when designing digital products. And you talked about engaging with residents. There are simple things that we can do using Microsoft products in order to make sure that residents can engage. We need to make sure that our staff really walk in the customer's shoes. And we will be kicking off internal engagement sessions with staff in May in order to better understand where they think they need upskilling and what they think about digital. As well as us maybe not having that face-to-face interaction with our residents, we've lost that face-to-face interaction with our staff. So we don't get to hear on a day-to-day what issues they're having. We just know anecdotally the conversations that they're having with our IT help desk and the kind of issues that they've had working remotely. And a lot of those are down to not having basic digital skills. So as a partnership, we're also looking at those motivations and behaviours. We know there's many within the borough who have the skills but maybe choose not to. And as I talked about before, there are those who just don't feel secure online and don't have that confidence. So we want to make sure that we engage them and provide an offer for them as well. And really the value in bringing that partnership together is not just about bringing our collective resources, our knowledge and skills, but also our ability to be able to campaign and in order to raise funding. It's not cheap getting devices, as we know when we've looked at making provisions for schools, but we need to raise our collective voices, bring it together and create a movement and attract some investment and campaign for the changes that we need to see locally. So we're looking to not only work with other local authorities on their campaigns, but also national campaigners as well. For example, making sure gov.uk websites are free to access, and we will generate what's needed within Redbridge as well. Obviously, when it comes to funding bids, most of our partners already look for funding. There's a lot of bids for skills funding already, and obviously Redbridge Institute and New City College are very good and seasoned pros at going for those fundings. But how do we bring the collective voice of the partnership? That will it enable us to access bigger pots of funding and funding streams that we've not been able to consider before. So we're looking to bring together a funding strategy and look at what's best in terms of where we can harness the potential of the partnership there. We obviously have been around for the last couple of months, and we have been trying to work. We've obviously worked with Education and Inclusion, helping them with their campaign to get devices for schools. There was a need for day ops users. We've just heard today, actually, we've been successful in getting the 50 plus laptops that they asked for their users. So with that will come a package of skills and data in order to make sure that those users, even though day opportunity centres are opening up, we can now give them a face-to-face offer of training and make sure that if there is a further lockdown, that they are not isolated as perhaps they have been in the last 12 months. And just to say that we know that 11% of our borough have either no digital skills or have just chosen not to go online. And we've identified those 32,000 individuals within the borough. We know where they are. We just need to understand a bit more about them themselves and what they need. But the London Office of Technology and Innovation have asked to work with us because we've shared our methodology with them, and they would like to adopt that London-wide. It's something that most boroughs really struggle with identifying who needs help. We all have the statistics from the ONS, but we think we've managed to actually identify where the 11% is. So we're going to be sharing that work with Lottie, and they will be developing a London-wide methodology and getting other boroughs to work with them as well. And we can harness that partnership as well, a London-wide partnership, in order to create what we need on a London-wide platform and the campaigns we may want to run. And it will also enable us also to lobby some big firms and government as well. Collectively, the louder the voice, the more we can do. And then I guess the next steps for us, and you talk about engagement, will be really that engagement piece, that face-to-face engagement. Is very difficult to deliver anything in the digital exclusion place without doing face-to-face engagement, first of all. So we are looking to start internally with skills engagement with staff in May, and then work to advertising external engagement with our residents and our businesses as well. Businesses are very keen to better understand how they can use social media and harness the abilities of 5G that we now have in the borough that's been rolled out while we've all been at home. So we will be kicking off that face-to-face engagement as soon as we possibly can, and the earliest opportunity with the lifting of lockdown. So yeah, if there's any questions, happy to take them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Am I getting a bit of feedback here somewhere? Right, thank you very much for that. I see Councillor Canal has raised his hand. Is it going to be on the digital access and digital inclusion, Councillor Canal?
Well, that was the plan, Chair, unless you want something more interesting.
Oh, well, I could, but let's stick to this for the time being. Okay, rock and roll.
Can I preempt it by joining in with Councillor Sachs by welcoming Julian Ellaby to our borough? I think his work with local London was very, very interesting. And that, of course, went beyond the Labour Party, including 2 Conservative boroughs. And I think there does need to be some high-level thinking about long-term infrastructure and support that links the boroughs together. We aren't islands in his capital. We're actually all very, very linked indeed. But I wish you happiness and success in your role here, sir, within Redbridge. And can I thank Mandy and indeed Fazana for their presentations. Would you agree, Mandy? It's a dangerous thing to say, as I'm setting a trap. I don't mean to. Is there a dissonance between our drive as a council to be more efficient and to drive the online offering, and the fact that a significant number of our residents, for various reasons, can't access it? So we have an online vision but an analog 10%, or I think it's 11% of our borough who find it hard to do that. And are we not in danger of driving further exclusion by putting digital not just first, but as only? And more broadly, within the overall presentation tonight, there's been some excellent aspirational statements, but are we able to go beyond KPIs and look at real people, and you say you know who they are, and actually have real targets, as in every year we will reduce the number of people who are excluded by a set percent from X thousand to Y thousand, because it is in the, and I think we've all seen it over the last 12 months. If you're in a home that has got access to the internet, you can't compete for work, you can't access services, you can't shield and get your shopping delivered. It is a massive challenge for us as a borough. And I'm very grateful that Councillor Coombe, for whom I have the highest regard, is actually leading and sharing on that particular forum. So I know that she will do her best to bring in policy that makes a difference rather than looks good. So I hope that question's helpful. And I'd welcome Councillor Coombe's response as well, Chair, if I may.
We will try. Imran, do you want to come in first on that questions from Councillor Cannell?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to pick up on a point around digital first and improving our online capability, I think that's been an ambition for the council for a number of years. It continues to be that ambition, accelerated as a result of what we've seen over the course of the last year. The 90% that we talk about and that do want to access and access digital services in their day-to-day lives as a matter of course. We've got to make sure as a council that our online offer is as good as they would receive if they were interacting with any other organisation or company out there. So that is by default the kind of position. That being said, it's absolutely imperative that we also don't close our other channels, our telephone channel. It's about improving that channel, how our residents access the telephone, how we improve the offer when it comes to face-to-face. We would have heard, and there's much work going on in terms of how we develop that face-to-face offer further with the development of the Community Hubs programme and what that could lead to and bring to residents across the borough. So absolutely no intention to close other channels, absolute intention to improve the current channels that we have, and that includes our web channel, which is good in some places, requires much improvement in others, and that's not me saying that. That's our residents telling us that. We have a customer satisfaction survey that's been ongoing for the last 7 or 8 months now. I think it's probably 8 months. Mandy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at the data that's falling off the back of that, you look at the customer satisfaction levels, which sits at this point in time around about 60-odd%, which is an improvement over the course of the last year and a half from where it was, which was somewhere in the region of 40-odd%. And if you think the industry standard across local government sits around 70%, but that 60% average, if you look at the telephone, if you start to split the satisfaction results, and we look at the digital, the online offer satisfaction levels are around about 40%. And if you look at the telephone satisfaction at this point in time, we're hovering in the region of around about 70-odd%. And then there's face-to-face to consider in there as well. So there is that disparity. There is much work to be done in a digital sense to improve our offer, and it's absolutely not our intention to close any of our channels. In fact, to go the opposite way and improve the offer that we have across all 3 channels to ensure that everyone's needs are served. So we just worth picking up on that.
Can I come back briefly, please, Chair?
You can, Councillor Cannell.
Thank you. Is it fair to say, Emran, that benchmarking ourselves against other local authorities is only part of the story? I know that Mr. Ellaby was a director of comms in a previous guise many moons ago. Shouldn't we be benchmarking ourselves against the best of the best in terms of business to consumer surveys and interactions? So we are fundamentally a business to consumer, a business to resident organisation, and shouldn't our benchmarking be against the likes of Marks and Spencers or BT or whoever, rather than against councils who historically have been less good at this?
If I can just come back on that,
happy to deal with that, Emma.
Completely agree with you, Councillor Canal. Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree with you. I think where we were as an authority 18 odd months ago, when we done the original survey and the customer satisfaction survey, when we talk about 43%, you know, the crawling before we run, getting us up to a standard where we are on par, so to speak, with other authorities. But if we are, and we are absolutely aiming at that as an organisation, we can't think of ourselves as a local government. We've got to think about ourselves as a business, as an organisation that is there to serve customers, residents. And if we are thinking about that, then we should be aiming in the region of, you know, the 90%, the 95% benchmarks that have been set by those companies, such as BT, over the course of the last 18 months. I mean, that being said, if I think about BT in particular, they have moved completely away from any form of telephone contact, and it is absolutely all online at this point in time. So, you know, it's that balance of making sure that we do have that offer. But your point absolutely is one that sits at the heart of our customer strategy, and making sure that we do have an offer that is highly regarded by everyone who accesses the council.
Can I thank you, and thank you for the work you and your team are doing and the progress you've made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julian. Did you want to come in on those points?
Yes,
I saw your hand shoot up there.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points from Councillor Canal, which I think is absolutely spot on, about that Redbridge can achieve more by the collaboration it can do with other authorities, regardless of political backgrounds within them. And I'll give you one example. At the moment, there is a program that will be launched shortly, which will be for Redbridge as well, which is a program it's an e-business program for businesses. It's basically to help businesses use digital more effectively. And because the partnership got the money, it allows Redbridge to be part of the partnership, which allows Redbridge to get the benefit. And that is about face-to-face work with local businesses about how they use digital to improve and sustain their business. So I think that partnership working is really important. There are other opportunities. For instance, there's the ESF money that the GLA have. It's 55 million. And we are bidding for that money right now, and that will support different parts of Redbridge Council if we're able to get it. But that includes things like job brokerage. And so again, it's a kind of about the type of support that we'd be able to give. So I just wanted to completely concur with the idea that collaboration could actually enable Redbridge to get quite a bit more to do that. And I would pick up on the point as well about the quality of the service we provide. I think part of what struck me about the work that Fazana's doing is that it's about being able to bespoke the response to the audience as well. And I think it's something that's really important about, as we understand the data, which has come up earlier, that we understand how we work with different audiences across Redbridge to make so that when we talk about 1995, it's because we are actually quite agile in how we respond to different people. So it's not a kind of vanilla one size fits all. It's actually, that's one of the great bits about being a council, that we can do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Julian. Some very pertinent points there. Mandy, did you want to come in on the back of what Councillor Canal have been contributing?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point, talked about digital first and the 11% not wanting to go online. That's it would be wrong to say that all of them didn't want to go online. Certainly in the engagement that we did with One Place East and Age UK, overwhelmingly 90% of those who would class themselves as not tech savvy, they were desperate to get online. They just lacked the skills and the confidence, and that's the bridge that we need to build. of those who really don't want to go online, then it's about making sure that that capacity is available on the other channels. We definitely want all residents to be able to be served by the channel of their choice. And it could be that they are different digital channels, and it's not things like emails or reporting functions. It could be things like voice videos, it could be WhatsApp, it could be other digital channels that are perhaps more appropriate and easier to use with assistive tech. So it's about exploring the possibilities. And I think you're right to say it is not just about numbers, it's about real people. And that's why we're not relying on the numbers. That's why we are going out and actually meeting and engaging with them face to face in order to make sure that we do understand the issue properly. So we are definitely not just relying on numbers. It's unfortunate because of lockdown we've had to just look at numbers so far, but definitely we were putting faces to those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. That's interesting to hear. I'm never too sure in my own head about how many people refuse to use digital and how many just are unable to. And I think getting to the bottom of that issue is going to be very important for future progress. Councillor Coombe, you've had your hand up for a while. Would you like to come in at this stage?
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't take my hand down in case you forgot me.
I would never forget you.
No, thank you. So I'd just like to say nervously thank you very much to Councillor Canal for his kind words, but just also to assure him that on the back of what Julian and Emma and Mandy have said, that actually we're not driving the council to be totally digital, because that's just not going to work for everybody. But I think the more efficient and the easier it is for people to use the digital channels, it makes it easier and more efficient for the staff to actually, get work done, provide the services for the residents that they need. But everything that we do is focused on the end, which is the residents. What do the residents need? And so just to take up Mandy's point about, numbers and meeting people face to face, because actually you just get a much better understanding of some really complex difficulties when you actually talk to somebody. And just also reassure you, once when I was in sitting in on the customer service phone calls, there was somebody at the end of the line talking to one of the officers and having trouble with paying their council tax, and obviously somebody with a lot more difficulties in their life than just not being able to come up with that next month's instalment. And because the officer on the end of the phone was very skilled in it, could solve that problem for this customer, and also say, and actually, are you worried about such and such? Because if you are, we can do this. And you could hear the relief in the woman's voice, that actually it wasn't actually a question she would ever have asked because she didn't know enough. But the skilled officer at the end of the phone did know that. And so there will always be that channel. And the better we get at the digital stuff for the rest of us, the more time we'll have for the people with those, with the more complex difficulties and the more vulnerable residents that we deal with. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Coombe. Councillor Javed.
Well, thank you, Chair. That was very interesting debate on digitalization. I know it's the age of technology, but we also are pleased to hear that the officers recognize the need for face-to-face interaction with residents. And one of the points I was going to make was that the the point is made in their presentation and report about people applying for a blue badge. On one hand, we're all concerned about those who abuse the system, but on the other, those who generally need one and have a difficulty in making an application online. And if we were just to totally, go digital, they would be prevented, if you like, from that vital service that they need. So please keep that in mind. and hope that you have this hard copy as well. During this pandemic, I had to help someone filling in PIP form. And I tell you, it's a nightmare to do a hard copy, even worse when you're doing it online.
I'm not entirely sure what a PIP form is, Councillor Javid. I'm not sure if anybody else does.
So, Chair, you would understand if I say DLA.
Say what?
If disability benefit.
All right, you're going into an acronym there.
What the government has done is they introduced the PIP, which is a personal independent payment, it's called. But it's for short, it's called PIP. And what I'm saying is there are people in Redbridge who experience that problem. And I'm pleased to hear that officers not totally shutting the door on them, as it were. With regards to so hope you can please make note that people are in the borough who lack skills, digital skills to maximize services. And that brings me to next question with regards to employment. Pleased to hear Julian mentioned that we are likely to be part of 230 million worth of project the government is bringing. And also Mandy alluded to a skill audit presumably have been carried out. 11% of people who have no skills at all. But don't know what other skills people have. And so if we want to be successfully part of that employment restart, we need to have some kind of data as to who and where we can benefit. One is to provide employment, and the other is to actually train and retrain our workforce. And the third point is, which is related, is the food poverty. You mentioned in your presentation and in the report, which is that lots of people depended on the food bank and so on, the people on the benefits and so on. And I don't know whether there's a study already, or perhaps we can put in a work program. It is to look at people on benefit, on housing benefits and other benefits. Are they the same people who were or are reliant on food banks? And are they the same people who are unemployed or lack skills and so on? If they do, then we try and assist them in getting skilled, educated, as it were.
All right, I was trying to keep the debate on digital inclusion at this stage. You've gone a bit wider here.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Javid. I mean, I was hoping to pick this up in the final debate at the end.
Okay. Well, I have one or two more points to make. Another one on housing, which I haven't really touched on. The employment was mentioned of the grant and the skill audit, Mandy's presentation. So that's the reason I mentioned it.
Can we just try and get the digital inclusion issue out of the way and then come to the rest of it?
You get that in and I'll come back.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Islam, you got a contribution here relating to the digital inclusion issue?
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to I got a few points. I listened to all my fellow colleagues and about a number of issues raised, and I share with their opinion as well. But a couple of things. One, the number we can put it on debate, and I mean that we cannot say this is the right number, and it depends on who is doing the survey and how you're getting all these things. This is one. Other things, what is worrying me most is I feel very strongly then we are moving away from face-to-face work, bringing all the technologies. And I'm a very, strong believer of community direct work, like face-to-face work, whatever we give the name. And that is I'm very much worried about that, then we are moving completely. But thank you, Helen, when you said they would not completely be wiped out, yeah? But if we can keep in our mind, then there's a lot of community members, then who is Councillor Javid was saying, that they're not familiar with the technology and digital platform. And and if we have the way is going, and if we have the same pattern, and I think that we're going to lose a lot of contribution from from the community, and so much you can learn from them. We do not want to exclude them from contributing to develop our borough. So that's what I'm to say for the time being. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Shem. I think it's something we all worry about, and I don't think anybody is intending that the entire proceedings of the council become digital anytime soon. But Councillor Koo might be able to give us some enlightenment on this subject. I see she's had her hand up for a while now.
I have no personal plans for the whole of the council and all its interactions to be digital, because I don't think that's possible.
No, and it's not going to work ever. It's a question of balance, I think. But
and some of us wouldn't be able to get in every time either.
No.
I just wanted to pick up the Councillor Javid's point about the blue badges.
Yes, about which you and I have had many conversations over the months. Yeah.
Absolutely. What was I going to say is that actually, we don't set the criteria for blue badges. That's a government thing, which they've devolved to local government. So it's central government down to local government. We administer it. We don't make it up. We try and do it as efficiently as we can. We have taken on a firm in the Midlands who now deals with all our blue badge applications, and now turning them around in a much faster time, because it was taking several weeks, and now
they're all online, Helen.
Sorry,
they're all online. That was my point.
Yeah, and my point is that that's central government. But what we have also done is worked with Age UK and to help people so that they have some old devices from the council, so that they can actually talk to people and fill the form in as they go online. So there are lots of little things like that going on as well. And obviously we still need more, because the whole application, you're right, any kind of government form is a nightmare, and the most that we can do is to help people get through that process. So I'll just leave it there on the blue badges. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Okay, at this stage, can I suggest that Farzana and Imran take us back to the slide. What says, what do you want to do? Can you stick that up to assist us? And councillors, what have you got to contribute on this issue? Whoops, not any questions.
But Chairman, I did say to you that on 2 issues that I wanted to come in, so you let me know when.
Yeah, I'm just trying. I was expecting Farzana to be faster with the slide here.
Sorry, Councillor, which slide was it you needed?
The what do you want us to do slide. Councillors.
Page 16, I think it is.
That's the one.
So was it the one asking are these the right things?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Further down. Gaps and the work plan for the year
work
ahead.
Plan, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Jumped again. Sorry.
Don't worry. Technology does this. It never behaves all the time.
Sorry. To click into the slide. That's not going to work today, I think. Keeps clicking back to the wrong side. The work plan.
I would just leave it like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave it like that then. You can see that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm assuming you can all access the slide presentation on your iPad or whatever, like I am doing.
Yeah,
okay.
You can.
Councillors, members of committee, your thoughts, please, on what we should be doing for the future. Got it, Councillor J.
Thank you,
lead off?
Chair. Thank you. Yeah. Could I please make a start on what I talked earlier on briefly in relation to employment? welcome that, and I hope that we participate fully in terms of getting restarted, as it were. So that's a good thing. But also we need to look at, Mandy mentioned about, as I said, I repeat, audit skills, some form of audit skill have been carried out, that we need to, how we address that. So that needs to be put into our code and work plan, and how we can do that. Then is an issue about helping the businesses, which is again a related issue around employment. We've got lots of BAME businesses in Ilford Lane, for example, and I don't know how many of them would have any skills to do anything else. So what we really need to do is to have, if you like, a business liaison officer to work with them, as well as helping them to become digital. So that's what I would say to look at. Audit skill, look at the BAME community, business liaison officer, and help to meet that gap in the skills. And the second issue that I wanted, now that I've got the floor, might as well do it now, it's in, and sorry, related issue was about the food poverty. I wanted to, if the officer could include in the work program, to look at, are they the same people who are or were getting help from the food banks on the benefits in food poverty, or losing their benefits, or having problems, who are also unemployed. And why are they unemployed? Is it because of lack of skills and so on? Some study need to have happened in order to reduce the number, whatever the number of people are on benefits, to alleviate food poverty, as it were. The third issue was around housing. There are two issues in relation to not the demand for general housing. My point is about the special needs housing, i.e., homes for disabled people. 2 points to be made. If we can send an advisory note to housing and planning to say that all new developments should include lifetime homes, and a percentage must be included, which is based on the demand, but say lifetime homes must be included in every development. The second element is the people who can stay at home. Our policy is to help them to stay at home, and that by way of offering them disabled facility grant, DFG. That takes a very long time, and hope we can look at that as to how we can speed that process up. It takes a very long time from the OT, occupational therapist assessment, the plans, the estimates, and then the approval, and people are happy or not happy. And whilst that is going on, the applicant suffers in silence. And I've seen them many over the years in my ward and in my work life as well.
All right, thank you, Councillor Javid. There's some food for thought in there. I'm going to ask Emran to comment, maybe. But just to point out that this is a scrutiny committee, not a policy formulation committee. What we're asking here, the officers to do here, is to put particular emphasis into monitoring and developing certain policy areas. But Emran, are you available to respond to the points that Councillor Javid raised there?
I'll pick up on a couple of them. Certainly the point made around businesses and really kind of getting some assistance to those businesses across, as you put it, and use the example around Ilford Lane. We know that I think it's right up there in the high 90s, 90% range, where we've got businesses that are micro businesses and the kind of cash economy, and how do we work with that that group of businesses to really kind of improve their current offer. It's something that I know Sharon Strutz, who works alongside and with the bid, has been talking about for some time, and I'm sure that's something I could get some more information on in terms of where that work is, and come back to you on that. There is your point there around the DFG and the usage and the process to which and how we process applications, and from the point of a request all the way through to an actual adaptation being made, if it is an adaptation within someone's property. That's something that we've picked up and as part of the accessibility working group, and it's something that we started to look at last year. It's not something that we've been able to make much progress on in light of what's been going on over the course of the last year, but certainly was on the agenda, and not overtly in what Fazana pitched up a bit, a tad bit earlier, but it is one of the work streams that we will be picking up with the likes of Brett Leahy and our housing colleagues. So I can absolutely give you an update on that off the back of this meeting.
Well, would you not include in your strategy as to what we should be doing in a work plan, as it were? You're asking us questions. Should it not be included in that work plan?
Yeah, it could. It is.
Both of my questions, because they require a bit of in-depth looking into as to where the problem is.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, the DFG was part of our work plan, is part of our work plan, and we'll make that and bring that out. The work on the bid is something that I know is going on in the background, and I think there is Mandy will be meeting with the likes of Work Redbridge and the Ilford bid post Easter, I understand. And Mandy, correct me if I'm wrong. To start that conversation. Do you want to add anything, Mandy?
Chair, thank you. Just to reiterate, the Ilford Bid have approached us. They will be bringing an offer to the table in order to not only provide apprenticeships but employability courses and a digital program for businesses. So they're looking at being able to train up at least as a minimum 50 businesses every year. And so they want to engage with us to see how the partnership can help bring that program together and help them deliver that across Ilford. Obviously, that is Ilford Bid, so that's just one area of the borough. But if it's an offer that we think is good and could be replicated elsewhere, then we would be looking to work with them in order to replicate that in other areas, particularly in Hainault.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Councillor Sachs, you've had your hand up. You want to contribute to the debate here?
Yes, in response to ideas for the work programme over the next 12 months. Some of these actually are a repetition of what I said in my earlier contribution. The first one is long COVID. Can we try and get hold of that data so that we can try and find out how long COVID is particularly affecting those residents who find it more difficult to access our services. The next one is on the council's website. What I think needs to be happening as a particular point in the work programme is actually looking at that website again and again and again, trying to make it more and more user-friendly, less and less counter-intuitive. I know there are people who think we've got the absolutely the best website in the world. But I'll just give an example. Probably the page that I use most on the website is the meetings calendar. Very useful page for council members. And believe it or not, I can never remember how to find it, and it isn't actually that easy to find from the front screen of the website. So can we make these pages easy to find, a simple and keep on making our website easier and more user friendly? That's what we need to do, and I think that's probably the best thing that we can do for people who are starting their own digital journey and starting to people, as I say, particularly the people who've experienced it. If we can make it easy for everybody, then we'll be making it easier for people who have these difficulties. And another repetition from my previous contribution, social value. How about putting in the work programme one of the rounds of the scrutiny committees a series of opportunities for members to contribute to the development of social value, and particularly which TOMs to prioritise and make mandatory. And finally, in relation to the question that's on the screen right now, how can we better advocate for people with a disability and make sure they're treated fairly? I've actually got a brilliant example of this, because at my constituency surgery about 2 years ago, a blind constituent of mine came in and told me about the difficulties she was having actually accessing any services at all. Unfortunately, about 3 days after that happened, I went to a training session where Emran was at, and I told him about this, and he arranged personally to ensure that constituent got a phone call from somebody who would be able to take her through those services. So that's an example of what works out well purely by good luck. But maybe we could have a single point of contact. Members could have a single point of contact, so that if we encounter a constituent who needs that help and who needs that advocacy, we can get it sorted out very quickly and simply. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sachs. Emran, can you respond to Councillor Sachs's issues?
Yeah, a couple of points there. The point around the website and the continuous development is, you're absolutely right. That's something that the strategy that was approved over in December of last year talks at length about, not looking at it from the eyes of the council and officers, but really kind of looking at it from a user and customer's perspective and designing services in that way. I think it's been well said across a number of different forums and platforms that there are areas of our website that are held in high regard in terms of usability, and there are other areas that are not so, which is a polite version. So there's much work to be done in particular areas. There is a formal plan that sits behind all of our respective directorates in terms of how we plan to move those services into a better place from a web perspective, and improving their digital offer. So there is a huge work program that sits behind that. I'd be more than happy to update everyone on this committee at some point with regards to progress and the specifics around that at some point in time. Your other point around the single point of contact, and that's something that we've been talking about within our customers team, and moving away from thinking about the way that we handle inquiries and complaints and deal with specific queries that come through our members. Member inquiries account for probably the best part of 2,500–3,000 inquiries on an annual basis. That is something that we're looking at within the team in the formation of our customers team. We are talking about that customer resolution officer, a single point of contact that we could potentially bring about in that space that could deal with members' inquiries in a very different way. That's something, again, I'd be more than happy to come back to you with regards to how we actually go about doing that. It's conversations and discussions at the moment as to how that would work. You don't want to set something up that is just going to be untenable and not going to be possible to manage, but definitely something that we are looking at, Councillor Sachs.
Thank you, Emran. Dr. Michael, can we just make sure that we're noting these points for inclusion in the minutes so that we can chase up on these subsequently? Councillor Cannell, do you want to make a contribution here?
Thank you, Chair. I have no doubt that Mr. Seigel and his team have thought of this already. So at any point, feel free to raise your hand and stop me. But amongst the sites that I interact most often, the most successful sites, in effect, have a personalised menu. They recognise me. They know what I tend to look for. So Amazon will have a certain types of books. Are we considering, or do we have plans to have, I think it will be the same thing actually, a system that, let's say Mrs. Patel logs on and her main interests are disability benefits and garden waste, just completely randomly. Are we able to, when she goes to our website, personalise the landing page to make it easier for her to find the services she wants most of the time? That hand says stop, Emma. I'm liking it. Go on.
It is absolutely something that we are not just looking at, but talking about. The GDS, the Government Digital Service, have just run a pilot specifically looking at the user needs in the round, as opposed to just having a generic site. So it does exactly as you've just described. It will it goes a step further, where it asks you as an individual a series of questions. It tries to understand a bit more about you as an individual, and then it will push those services, those offers, whatever they may be, to you. And it becomes a more personalised service that you as an individual can then shape and build your own kind of account space and things that you would like to receive information on. Those are things in the web world that are old hats now, and it's been, this is stuff that has existed for a number of years, and I suppose from a Redbridge perspective, it's us catching up and not just catching up, but creating something that actually meets the needs of all of our users. So again, I think it's I could go into a whole lot of detail in terms of the work that's going on there, but I suspect it will be another session that we come back with. I've seen some references in the chat around AI and what are we doing to kind of improve our processes in that experience, and I'd be more than happy to come back and update this committee with regards to the work that we're doing in that space.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emran. I want to try and conclude upon the debate here, because we're running up on time now. Is there anybody else that wants to make a contribution to Fazana's question on the screen? I think obviously it behoves all of us as councillors to have an advocacy role. I'll say it takes about a quarter of my time as a ward councillor, acting as an advocate for people who have particular problems with council services. If anybody else wants to come in there, and then I'll ask Councillor Coombe to make the final contribution. No? Okay, all happy? Councillor Coombe, can I ask you to summate on the debate?
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank Fazana and Mandy and Emran for all the work that they do for residents, because it's tireless. Well, maybe it's not tireless, but because they do work really hard, and I think you definitely deserve the weekend off. Make sure that you don't touch your emails over the bank holiday weekend. But what I was going to say, I take the point about the website, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to add any more than Emran's already said, but Councillor Sachs is correct. one of the things I just wanted to flag up was that we're looking for people to join the community voice, which is residents to become part of our community voice. It's a chance to get involved, make your neighbourhood a better place to live. It's sort of like a panel that we can talk to find out their opinions on, you know, ASB, making your neighbourhood a better place, this sort of thing. So we're actually can go out and talk to people and have a proper conversation rather than a tick box exercise in a survey. So I'll send you the link so that you can have a look at it on the website. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Coombe. Okay, I'm going to take that pretty much as conclusion of the debate on the issue, and again echo Councillor Coombe's comments on thanking the officers for the detail they've provided us on this subject. So can I formally propose that we note the report and the presentation, and I'm going to suggest that we ask the officers to come back to us with an update report in September this year. Will be about 6 months' time.
Chair, could I please interrupt? You said we just note the report. I think we should say we note with amendments that have been made and comments that have been made.
Yeah, yes, that's fine. I'm quite happy with that. I'm sure, yeah. I'm sure Dr. Michael has been making notes.
It's a record then, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have, yes.
Okay, don't worry. We should be checking those minutes in due course. Okay, so are we happy to formally accept the recommendation? Can people just stick an electronic digit into the hyperspace?
Agreed.
Lovely, lovely. That's quite a few hands. Right. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on. Only a couple of items remaining. Next item is future meetings, which is currently scheduled in for the 10th of May. Issue to point out here is that will obviously be after the annual council, so we're not at this stage entirely we have no idea who the chair will be, or who, even for that matter, committee members will be. Hopefully most of us will be returning, as most members have been putting in a very good stint on this committee. And also to point out that the 10th of May will be after the government's new cut-off deadline for online meetings, which has taken a lot of us by surprise and left some of us aghast. I believe the end of online meetings is proposed to be sometime after the 7th of May. So it remains to be seen whether the next meeting on the 10th will be a face-to-face event or an online event. Personally, at this stage, until I've had my second vaccination, I'd much rather it remained online, but we will have to see how this pans out with advice from governance in view of the government's decision.
Hear, hear, Chair, hear, hear.
All right. And obviously the new chair, or whoever is chair after annual council, will have to sit down with the officers and work out the future work programme. But suggestions have come from councillors to examine the Growth Commission, extend an offer to the newly appointed Women's Champion to speak to us about how she sees strategy and resources contributing to the issues and priorities that she'll be having in that role. And also offer an opportunity to Cabinet Member Councillor Howard to come to speak to us at some stage in this year about his role and where his priorities are going to be on that issue and how that will relate to strategy and resources. So I think that we'll put those we'll park those issues up to be integrated into the work programme after the annual council, unless anybody else has got any other issues they particularly want to mark up as potential future work programme issues.
I'd be happy for members to email me with any ideas as well.
Indeed. It's I mean, this is really just to remind people that this issue's on the agenda. It will be best dealt with by formally emailing to Michael. Councillor Sachs.
Yes, Chair. I see that there isn't a single officer or representative from the resources side of our responsibility here tonight. I mean, I do want, on the first day of the new financial year, I would just like to pay a tribute to those officers with the support of their cabinet member, naturally, in balancing the books in 2021, a very difficult year, probably the most difficult year this council has faced. But one of the areas which, and I think everybody who's involved with this agrees, hasn't gone particularly well on the resources side, is the programme of savings, and we do need. We've known as members that we do need to continue to make savings in order to continue to balance our books and to continue to provide our services. So I think it's important that this committee does proactively monitor progress on that, and therefore I'm flagging that up as an item for the forward ongoing programme.
Thank you, Councillor Sachs. Yes, the souls from resources have had an easy time of it tonight, bit of a night off. I hope there's some decent football on for them to be watching while we were doing this. I'm just grateful the England game was last night. I'm sure we will, in the next months, be returning to the issues of savings in the resources department, and I'm sure that Dr. Mike and the forthcoming chair will be working to get that item agendaed. Councillor Javed, got a contribution?
Yeah, thank you. We heard Councillor Coombs earlier on mentioning that the council were actively and encouraging residents by way of, if you like, a citizens' jury type of interaction with local residents, and that's a good step. That's good. And that brings me to say that we are going to embark, or the council is going to embark on a very big regeneration program by the name of the Western Gateway and other town centres and so on. But particularly Ilford Town Centre, Western Gateway, major piece of work, 900 plus homes and many other activities and so on. And I feel that we ought to, as a strategy committee, look at that as well. I don't know how you or the committee, other committee members feel, but I feel that we ought to look at it at some time. I know it doesn't neatly fit in with our committee, but because we want residents to be involved in what's going on, I feel that we ought to look at that as well.
Okay, well, I will discuss this issue with officers, but I do personally see it as a specific project in one particular part of the borough that falls firmly within Place Directorate's remit. But I'm sure the issue can be discussed in the coming weeks. But I'm at the moment more interested to see what Place Committee are doing on the issue. Councillor Coombe, did you have a comment there, or was that? Have I got an old hand from you? Okay.
Yeah, it must be an old. Sorry.
Thanks. Okay. I'm sure Michael got a note of those issues.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on and finalise the meeting. There are no urgent items that I've been made aware of. I just want to take the opportunity at this stage to thank Shana Ahmed, who's behind the screen here somewhere, who's one of our graduate trainees, has been pressing the buttons and doing the live broadcast and keeping all the technology going so that we can all interact with each other and with the public. I understand she's moving on to another assignment, and we're going to be losing her from here, but I just want to thank her very much for keeping the show on the road in hyperspace for the last few months. So good luck to whatever you're moving on to, Sharp.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for your work. All right, guys, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks very much for a good debate, and I hope I see you all fairly soon after we've got through Pesach, Ustra, and Easter. Enjoy those chocolate eggs.
Good night, all.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Good night.
Have a good weekend. And then there were two. I just need just 1 second. There we go.